out with Matt Vaughan, owner of Easy Street Records at Easy Street.
After hours.
Yep. We got Record Store Day coming up on Saturday. And one of the most anticipated releases comes from a local band that we love that performed live here in 2005.
April 29th, 2005. And now 14 years later, it's coming out on vinyl. It was as much as a surprise to me as it was to the world, because they didn't tell me about it. Of course, that's how they operate. I haven't even seen the packaging yet.
Yeah, we'll look at the packaging in a little bit here, 'cause we got a copy in-house, but you haven't seen it yet.
No.
And we're about to hop on the line with the lead singer from that band.
Yeah, and also one of Record Store Day ambassadors this year.
That's right, and one of our neighbors who likes to come shop here.
Well, he likes to shop at lots of indie record stores. I think he went to Lou's when he lived in San Diego, and a handful of stores in Chicago. But since he's been in Seattle, and specifically West Seattle, he's become a good friend of everybody that works here.
Yeah. We're talking about Eddie Vedder, so just waiting to hear from Eddie here in a sec to talk about Pearl Jam live at Easy Street Records.
There we go. Hello,
Hi.
Mr. Ambassador. How's that sound, Mr. Ambassador? Pretty good?
Ambassador to Hawaii. Do I have a sash I should be wearing?
Yeah, definitely.
I have a crown for you when you get back home.
How are you?
This boy.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about one of our favorite things, record stores.
Well, and music, yeah, sure. I know, record stores.
So Record Store Day is Saturday, and one of the most anticipated items is Pearl Jam live at Easy Street. And you recorded it, like the performance was in 2005. It was before Record Store Day even existed. But it was right when Matt was hosting a conference for the Coalition of Independent Record Stores. And tell me why back in 2005 that was important to you, to support them.
Well, to be honest, we were supporting Matt.
Oh.
We truly love him and the shop and the shops. He's always meant the world to us. And, people can talk to you about the music business, but when you're in a band or you're lucky enough to work with a crew, or you're lucky enough to work with, let's say, promoters or even the security, the relationships you get over the years, and even as you're struggling, it's the relationships that are important. And the cool thing about those relationships is that at the core of it, everyone loves music. Like, that is the core. Everyone's got this one thing that they all agree on, and there's a reason why they're there, especially when you're up and coming and struggling. The reason why you're there working free or whatever it is because you love music. So when it gets to this time where you can help out the community and community record store, then it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute yes. It was more the logistics became the tough, but the easy answer for Easy Street was yes.
Yeah. What was it like then playing for what was probably the smallest crowd you had played for in a long time?
The energy felt big. So, that's when you go beyond the numbers of the heads that you could see, although there was like people sitting up in the rafters and there were people behind, and there was so many freaking people packed. To be honest, it felt like more people than we'd ever played for because they were right, which was great. I remember coming back practice the night before, and I came by I just drove by and pulled my truck over and just come in and say hello and maybe see if they were having a beer yet. And to be honest, they weren't relaxed and having beers at all. It was still.
Didn't we park a semi truck full of all the product and all the bins in your driveway that night?
In front of my house.
Well, I can tell you what I recall. I mean,
Hey, I had a bigger record collection than Thurston Moore.
Is your hand on the mic? Where is your hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good.
The date of the in-store was April 29th, 2005. And what you got to remember around that time was, in the early 2000s, is the record stores were suffering. We were on the edge of the cliff. I mean, I can name a dozen shops here in Seattle alone that are no longer. And we were all struggling. It was Napster, it was file sharing, it was big box retailers, it was
E-tailers.
Yeah, yeah. And chain stores still at that point. And you, coming into the West Seattle shop, would genuinely always ask me, "Are you guys gonna make it? What's the physical music? Where is it headed? Because this isn't looking good. Your store looks busy enough, but." And then Mike would be coming into the Queen Anne shop asking the same thing. And then I happened to say, I'm going to be hosting this convention with a bunch of guys around the country that have stores like mine, and we're going to be talking about just that. How can we fight the powers that be, and how can we survive and keep this culture alive? And, you guys had always been doing that. You did the love letter in '94 with Spin the Black Circle, and at a time when vinyl was all but dead at that point. And, that was 10, 11 years before this in-store even happened. And you and Mike had both said, well, maybe we could get a dinner together and meet everybody because, early on, we don't know where we would have ended up with 10 and Versus and Yield and all that early on had it not been for record shops. And then you said, why don't you put a letter together to Kelly at Curtis Management, and we'll all act like we don't know what he's talking about. You put this letter together, and, us being a Democratic band, we're all going to jump up and say, yes, let's do it. And then a day later, that's what I did, and Kelly hit me up and said, hey, I don't really know you, but, do I got it right? Something like that. And then, like you were saying, the crew came down to the Queen Anne shop and said, hey, it's too visible, security's going to be a problem, fire exit's going to be a problem. And then Kelly met me here at the cafe and basically was giving me the kill shot to say we're not gonna be doing no in-store. And that's when you walked in.
That's pretty fortuitous timing.
That's when Eddie walked in, and I got my head on the ground. I'm like, well, hey, I gave it a good varsity effort, and hey, at least these record shops are gonna be able to meet Pearl Jam and we'll get a nice dinner out of it, and hey, that's great. And you walked in, someone had tipped you off about Kelly being here, and you were hanging out playing air guitar and swaying around with the air microphone and yelled over. There's a bunch of customers in the shop, and you yelled over to Kelly and said, "This will be just fine." And then Kelly's head dropped and said, "The boss says we're playing here in this little store, and I don't know how we're gonna do it."
Yeah. The energy from that performance is amazing. And it's cool it's coming out on vinyl for the first time.
What I remember too was that was all the great people out there, and then there's a little bit of nerves because these are all like some of the greatest music fans on the planet, with very discerning tastes. But the other thing was that John Doe was there from X. And that left no room to.
I was going to ask about the role that the record stores played in your life as a music fan, especially growing up.
Well, shoot, back in California, we had two. I was down in San Diego, and the bigger one, not like Tower Records, but the bigger one was called Licorice Pizza. And they had a really great logo, and they had a large selection. They were a pretty good big shop. And then on the other side of it, in Encinitas, California, had a little punk rock, more punk rock shop called Lou's Records. And sell things like bootleg vinyl and some rare, hard to find, pre-eBay, punk rock T-shirts. So like my first PIL T-shirt came from there. My first mod T-shirt came from Lou's Records. They're still down there, the same spot, but that those were places where I remember when a new Talking Heads record or a new Split Enz record would come out, skipping first class, so I could pick up the record as soon as it came out. We had open campus in high school, which didn't help. But to literally get the record first thing, ride my skateboard to school, ride it home time to play side one of, let's say, like Remain in Light by Talking Heads. I was such a huge fan of that group. And that first side of the record, like it was so different than the other stuff. It was so linear, rhythmic but linear, and it didn't have a lot of the stuff that I really loved about them. And then having to go to work at Long's Drugstore, and then come home after work that night, and then listening to the record in its entirety. Absolutely blown away once I got into the rhythm. But
wasn't that one of your first shows too? Was Talking Heads?
Oh, well, Bruce was my first show way back in or something in Chicago. Talking Heads, they pissed me off because I had tickets to see him in a small place, and they were one of my favorite, if not my favorite group at the time. And then they decided to play the US Festival. They invented a thing called the US Festival. Instead of seeing them with 1,500 people in Perkins Palace, whatever it was, they canceled that gig, and then played US Festival. Which, at first, I said I'm not going to that fucking thing to see. I'm not going to do it. And then day off, and sure enough, I ended up. I was just solo by myself. Just got to the second row of the US Festival with 50,000 people or something to see Talking Heads. But yeah, I love them. But going back, those early days when you basically camp out at the record as soon as it came out, which people did, and that was our first record kind of came out, but then by the second record, that meant a lot to me to hear that all these people were showing up at record stores, and I think some of them were putting out the record at midnight, Yeah. I think in Milwaukee or somewhere, there was like a mini riot, and the window people crashed through the window to get the record. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know if you want Bills or One Direction or Billie Eilish shit.
Yeah.
That new record's great. The Billie Eilish record's so great.
That's commitment. There'll be people camping out Friday night to pick up the Pearl Jam live at Easy Street, here at Easy Street on Saturday for sure.
Because there's only 10 available.
Ed, did the record store play a role in your music discovery and your ability to discover new bands and new music?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, sometimes it was like the cool guys that worked there. Sometimes it was like a cool person you'd be standing next to. You know, you were pulling out the jam record and you were asking them about it, or asking if they heard a bootleg, and they turned you on to another bootleg. I mean, you know, pre-internet, that was the campfire. You know,
Yeah.
the record store was the camp. And I was back of that story of Stipe and Peter Buck meeting in a record store in Georgia, talking about a Patti Smith record. So that band doesn't exist if it weren't for a record store. And then, you know, I don't think of music the same way if that band doesn't exist. So I know that there's a campfire on the internet with people talking and people behind their computers and sharing information and critiques, but that feels like more of an LED color, and I don't know. It still gives you light, but I don't know if you feel the warmth.
Yeah. Yeah. Record stores provide a way for people to connect, I think,
Well, let me tell you,
in person.
Ed worked at the store here one day, and I don't know how many people he turned on to Sonic Youth, but we had to order more the next day. Let's put it that way.
I did. I worked for free. I was just kind of a volunteer. We kept the store going. We kept
Well, you can clock in anytime.
Ed, I don't know if you realize this, but the show you did in 2005 for that independent coalition, or the Coalition of Independent Stores, there were only 15 stores at that time. The record came out a year later, on CD, just to independent stores, and that was a real statement. And that brought stores together, independent stores that were really struggling. A lot of them, it was life and death, at that point in time. And that act brought stores together that actually formed this bigger coalition that then really became Record Store Day. Record Store Day didn't start until 2008. And I know we all think of Record Store Day as every single day of the year, which it is. But it's cool to have a holiday, too, that celebrates the role that the independent store plays in the community. And Pearl Jam really played a role in Record Store Day existing today.
Well, what it did is it gave us confidence that we could and inspiration to carry on, and we formed 2 more coalitions after that, and it certainly upset the apple cart in the industry when Pearl Jam put the exclusive, because it ended up after the show.
Yeah.
It sounded so good, and I think Matt Cameron said my drums never sounded so good, and they decided to put it out as a CD, and didn't release it through the traditional distribution networks or through any major label. It was an exclusive piece that only independent stores got, which hadn't happened with large-sized bands. Later, Metallica would play Rasputin's, and Foo Fighters would play Fingerprints, but Pearl Jam was the first band to make it a cool thing to do.
If anything, it's all news to me. Seriously. No, if anything, it's just one little, you just do something that's that it's positive, it's a win-win, and then, you plant little seeds, if we all do that, with we all in ways, and we need to, good to hear these stories, these positive stories where something, a very small act can steamroll into something much bigger. And you don't think about the big outcome. You just do on a fairly small level. I'll be fortunate to see what comes out of it, and it works most of the time. Not always, but that's just when you dig in a little deeper. But with these days and voting and politics and young kids trying to form the future of our world, they need to be involved, and don't think that anything you do is too small. Any positive thing you do is too small, because it all adds up. Again, it's great news to me. Our group will take credit for it. If anything else, I think Steve, a young, cool record store owner in West Seattle that was really the core energy of getting the ball rolling.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that speaks to your point at the beginning of doing something to help, the people within the community or within your world. And in the music community, you mentioned, it could be people on the road with you, or it could be promoters. It could, that whole, it could be radio stations. It's people who love music working together and helping each other out. You never know, as you said, just the little things. If you do them from the heart, they might. Your intention wasn't to start Record Store Day, but something beautiful came out of it.
Well, and those relationships, and not only that but you end up with kind of like-minded people, and what is in the barometer is maybe what kind of music you think is good. And in a crazy way, music brings people together like that. And it maybe weeds out some of the other knuckleheads. So there's a true community there, no matter what kind of music it is. And in some kind of music, I might be the knucklehead. Together, and when you play shows, whether it's at Easy Street for people to pack in, it felt like 300.
It was probably 200. It's a small store.
It's a small store. It could be, the crazy thing when you do have the rare opportunity, and we're blessed to play for tens of thousands of people. It's almost overwhelming to think that you're. At some point, you can look out on a crowd and gauge, which they all are. You admire the fact that there's that many people agreeing on something. Agreeing on something for that moment, So there's no doubt whether it's, Radiohead or Jack White or, whatever the group, whatever the style of music, it's people agreeing together, and hopefully, that lasts weeks, not months or years after the show.
Yeah.
Well, I always love bootlegs because I would sneak small tape recorders. Remember, I mentioned I worked at Long's Drugs. Well, the nice thing about it was they had a photo, not a photo shop, but photo corner where they sold electronics, right? But that's where I would get some of the first ever micro cassettes, the first ever Walkman, because I'm old, and, recording Walkmans. So then I was making bootlegs, and it wasn't to trade, it wasn't to give to other people, it wasn't to sell. That's for damn sure. But I could listen to a band play the night that I saw them.
Yeah.
Even not great quality report, I could still hear like enough. Yeah, that and I could, sit the beat back after work with the headphones on and go right back to that place. Because sometimes a live show will lose its majestic power after a week or 2 or 3, or work gets you down.
What were some of those shows that you taped?
Oh shoot, from the Who to the Clash, the Pretenders, early Pretenders with all the guys, early Clash with all the guys. Is in like the 80s, 1980, 81, 82.
So Pretenders with Honeyman and Scott.
Oh yeah, and Pete Farndon.
Yeah.
At one point, and that was before Barricades even. So I was so close, and I put my hand on Chrissy Hines' boot. In the mic, It's something that I don't know. It was like magnetic, like her boot was. I put my hand on her boot. I couldn't help myself, and didn't kick it off.
She's amazing.
That was my first crush. Her and Tatum O'Neal.
Oh, yeah. And that first album's brilliant. Ed, you'll like this. I was working at First Ave, and I had a record store, First Avenue in Minneapolis. I had a record store a block away, too, and we sold the, first Pretenders album. They came and played First Ave, and I was a kid, I was like 19, and I somehow connected with Pete and James. So they invited me to go on the road with them, and they were playing First Avenue, but they were opening for the Who a night later in Kansas City.
Wow.
So I got to sit on the tour bus, go with the Pretenders, go to Kansas City. I'm like 19, and then that was at like an arena, right? So I'm in a hockey arena or whatever, back in the Pretenders dressing room, and Pete Townsend walks by, and I get to meet him. Like, it was mind-blowing. It was so cool.
I didn't even know this ever happened. Ever open? Ooh, that's insane.
It totally is. Like, in my mind, I'm like, they invited me. I'm like, shit, yeah.
Was that just one show or part of like a Midwest tour?
They were, I don't know why they were opening for the Who. They were on their own tour, right? And they had this gig with they did actually 2 nights for the Who, like I think Chicago and Kansas City. So I got to just have that experience as a music fan, and they really took took me under their wings. It was awesome.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
The Buzzcocks did the same with me. I was a kid, worked a little show free, doing crew free. Buzzcocks ever took me there. It was around Thanksgiving. We're playing the Santa Monica Civic. Up, slept on their floor at the Chateau Marmont. It's crazy. But I think we're going back to those cool relationships,
Yes. So I know you're a Ramones fan. You probably have the bootleg of it, but on Saturday, the 1979 New Year's Eve Palladium show's coming out on vinyl for Record Store Day.
Of the Ramones?
The Ramones.
At the Palladium.
It was.
Oh.
Do you know that recording?
No.
Do you have a record store close by on Saturday?
Johnny. I do.
Okay.
Matt will save you a copy.
I can't do that.
Oh, okay.
Do that. Yeah, because I don't want to. Even as the ambassador, I don't want there to be any collusion.
Have you looked at the list? Is there anything you're wanting to put in a little trick bag?
I saw Joe Strummer on it. I saw Devo on the list. After that, I had to stop. Started.
All
Awesome.
right. Any questions you got?
I'm good.
All right, Ed's got to probably get back to his family if you got anything.
Ed, thank you.
We got to hang out and come to my house, and then we'll pretend it.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Yeah, he lives right up the road.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Yep. West Side.
Right by the convenience store. Yeah, right by the convenience store where we get our beers. Right there.
Okay. Miss you already.
All right.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Thank you.